Hello. Tonight, we will not be talking about glorious kings or battles that shook the map. It's about a low roof at the end of an unnamed street, a place you wouldn't find on a map if you've ever seen a map. This is a story of no triumphs, no glory, just calloused hands, inadequate meals, and a quiet perseverance that most of us cannot understand. If this brings you peace, you can follow, or not. Just take a deep breath, and come back with me to where everything is small, but enough to get through the day. You were born on a misty morning, when the sun was just a faint streak behind the trees. There was no celebration, no bells, just your mother's sigh, the crackling of the fire in the hearth, and the skinny rooster crowing out of habit. For no reason at all. No one remembers the exact day. No one records it. There is no calendar, no book. There is only the frost before sowing season, or after a winter so long that even the dogs could not bark. That is how time passes here. Blurry, mixed with the smoke from the kitchen and the wind blowing through the cracks in the thatched door. The village you live in has no name. Or if it ever had one, it has long been forgotten. It lies in a shallow valley, hidden by hills and forests, far from anything you might call the world. So far away that you have no idea where you are, only that you are nowhere near anyone important. No maps, no directions. Just cow tracks and bushes where you scuffed your feet as a kid. If someone asked you which way was north, you'd point to where the summer sun rose? Not sure, but no one ever asked. The road here is not really a road. It is just a muddy ditch, where the old wheels of the wooden carts have carved 2 channels. When it rains, it becomes a small stream. When it is sunny, it is full of dust. No one cares for it. No one uses it except a few pack horses and an old salt cellar who comes twice a year. If it is not too cold. You live in a house that leans against the hill as if it's trying to keep its balance. The walls are made of mud mixed with straw, patched with moss and cracked in places. The thatched roof always has holes in it, not big ones, but enough that a light rain will make you put your pots inside. The floor is packed earth. Your feet are used to the cold in the mornings, and the faint warmth of smoldering ashes in the kitchen. You share the space with things that have legs: chickens, goats, the occasional rat. There are people, 2 siblings, parents, grandmothers, or some kid who lost his father to a fever last summer. There are no private rooms, just sleeping corners divided by crates, hanging coats, and silence. From here, the forest begins just a few steps away. The trees are thick. The roots are twisted. The light in the forest is like light through dirty water dull, shimmering and unsettling. You don't go that far? No one does, except when you need firewood or when the goat has run away. The forest doesn't hate you, but it doesn't welcome you either. Here, there is enough to keep you going, but never too much. You have a well, a mustard garden, a few chickens in case the fox hasn't caught them, black bread hard enough to be a weapon, and a pot of stew that you can't remember the last time it was really clean. But it still boils, and you still live. Day after day. The only sound of time was the ringing of a bell in a distant village. You could only hear it when the wind was favorable. Otherwise, you counted the hours by the shadows of the sun, or by the fatigue in your back, or by the smell of the earth, knowing that it would be cold before the sun set. There are about 20 houses here. Everyone knows each other. They don't always like each other, but they know who owes whom, who accidentally smashed whose chicken, who baked a cake without giving it to the oven keeper. It happens, but no one talks about it, unless forced to. Every season, someone dies. Not from accidents, but from old age and from illness, from cold. Death is not sudden. It is not tragic. It comes like a guest that everyone sees from afar. People prepare by being quieter, boiling more water, getting old towels, then waiting. You grow up with it. Don't question it much, because no one answers. And the strange thing is, though you are all poor, dirty, cold, underfed and forgotten, you are still alive. You know every clump of moss on the wall, every creak of the door, every shaft of light through the thatched roof every morning. And those things, small as they are the world. You don't dream big, not because you lack imagination, but because your imagination is already full just by imagining whether there's any meat left in the stew tonight. And so you begin a new day, no different from yesterday, and probably no different from tomorrow. But it is yours, even though no one remembers, even though no one knows the name of your village, even though you are not sure how old you are. You just know the wind is colder today, and the hens aren't laying eggs. And like every morning, you bend down, pick up some wood, and start the fire. Not for ideals, not for greatness. Simply because the fire is going out. The cold touches the back of your neck, and the crowing of chickens touches patience. No one really wakes you up here. The sun does it, and when it does, you can't bargain. Your body knows when to start. Your joints speak before you do. Your back, your knees, your hands that have been holding the hoe for too long. No pain. Just reminder that you are alive. You step outside. The ground is still damp from the night's dew. The wind still smells of ash, of trodden grass, of unwashed chickens. You're not surprised. This is the smell of morning. The smell of a day in which nothing has happened, but which doesn't promise to be easy. The first thing is do it again. Remove the straw covering the pot, relight the fire, pour in water from the well. If the wood is wet, you grumble, but not out loud. The coals can hear. You believe it. When the fire is burning, you stir the pottage. Not to eat it, just to keep it alive. Like a member of the family. Old. Silent. Never empty. If there is something left over from yesterday, a broken carrot, a few stalks of cabbage, you throw it in. It keeps the fire going, keeps the stomach going, keeps hope going. The children sleep a little longer. The old people are up before you. Maybe they are mending something, or just sitting and watching the smoke rise from the thatched roof. No reason at all. Just the habit of those who have lived long enough to know that everything will pass. Both day and person. You take your hoe outside. The field is behind the house, past a row of trees that have lost their leaves since last winter. The soil there used to be better, but it still yields something if you know how to ask nicely. Work begins. No one gives you a mission. You know what to do because if you don't work, you won't have anything to eat. You dig steadily. Each stroke is like a whisper to the earth. Please be kind this time. Halfway there, you stop. Not because you're tired, but because you want to hear silence. The silence here is not completely silent. There is the rustling of leaves, the sound of chickens a few roofs away, the sound of someone patting a tree trunk. But it is still called silence because no words in between. You can do this continuously until noon. There is no alarm, just the sunlight changing color, the shadows changing direction, and your stomach starts reminding you in a very direct way. Lunch was simple stale bread, a few slices of onion, a large spoonful of thick stew that might have been beans. You ate quickly, not because you were in a hurry, but because someone else is hungry too. Children wait for you to give them up. So do dogs. It's not your fault that you finished it. It's your fault, dowdy. The afternoon continues by doing what you didn't do this morning. There's always work to be done. Gather wood, mend fences, chase foxes, mend shirts, check thatch. You don't need a list. They happen on their own, and you just respond. As the light begins to fade, you feel tired. But not tired Bhutan orderly form of exhaustion. It's as if your body has learned to calculate, do enough, no more, no less. You come home. The stove is still red. The pot is still boiling. Someone added some mustard greens to the pot, or you forgot you did it before going to the fields. It happens. When every day is the same, memories begin to pile up like straw. You sit on a rickety wooden bench. Children play with sticks. Old people tell stories about the winter when the fox came into the kitchen. Everyone laughs, not loudly, but it's true. Because it really happened. There are footprints to prove it. It gets dark quickly. There are no lights. Lights are a luxury. You use the fire, the light from the stove, and your imagination to see each other. You fall asleep early, but not deeply. Only the first part. The second sleep comes later after you wake up in the middle of the night. Hear the wind. Pee. Or just sit and think. Not about the future, but about whether chickens will lay eggs tomorrow. And so a day passed, not special, not memorable, but not forgettable either. Friend exists in nameless rhythms, in unpraised chores, in ritualistic bending and rising. And the strange thing is, it's the things no one tells you that keep you alive. You stand up for the last time of the day. Stretching. Your back reminds you that you used it properly. You look up at the roof, where the moonlight filters through the straw like a thin thread connecting heaven and earth. You suddenly wonder, will the roof still stand tomorrow? And you know it's time to talk about that house. Your house has no design, no blueprints, no architect, no clear plan other than a vague intention must have a place to avoid wind, avoid rain, and lie down at night. You don't build it once. You patch it up over the years, it is like a piecer of memories. Each season decays. It is a work that is never finished and perhaps does not need to be finished. It starts with the frame. Rough, hand-hewn, sawn with rusty blades, brought from the forest you both fear and depend on. No wood is straight. The trees at the edge of the forest grow crooked, wind slanted, roots twisted, but you accept it. Because not straight does not mean useless. You build the frame with rope, with guesswork, with the collective experience of your father, your grandfather, and those whose names are not on the papers. When the wind pushes gently against the wall, you know it is not strong. When the wall falls, you rebuild it. When it survives the first winter, you call it a home. The wall is woven from soft branches, willows, nettles, things that can bend without breaking. You stick them in like a skeleton, then filled with the most vibrant mix you've ever touched earth. Water, straw, manure, a little cold ash, a little hope. That mixture is called dorb, a simple word, but you understand it better than any other, because you have used it yourself. Rub it into every crevice, every hole, pressed against the wall as if to cover up his own fear. At first it was thick, smooth, soft, and smelled strong. Then it dried. It cracked. You patched it up. A spot came off because of mice. So you patched it. A corner came off because of kids playing with it. So you patched it. One year you had to replaster most of the north wall because the east wind was too strong. You smelled the dorb every morning and every night. When you first live here, it's disgusting. After a few seasons, you feel safe. That smell, to you, is the smell of home still stands. Then the roof. Straw. Always straw. You dry it in bundles, tie it in bunches, and stuff it in layers. When you first stack it, it's golden like sun-dried honey. But not for long. The first rains come, the straw darkens, the wind tangles it, birds come and untangle it and carry it back to their nests. You patch it up. You take what's left and fill what's missing. Each season, the roof is like a torn sweater that's sewn back together. Sewn until hard to tell which part is original and which part is patch. You don't get angry. You don't get frustrated. You just keep going. Because that's what people who live here do continue. No matter how things are falling apart. Your door is made of plywood. It is not straight. The hinges are tilted. Every opening and closing is a negotiation with the wind and the humidity. It creaks, but you don't hear it anymore. Your ears have learned to only listen to what is really worrying. The door has no lock. No need. No one here steals from anyone. Everyone has a little of what is valuable, and the pricelesses cannot be taken out of the house. Window a hole, a wooden cover with a latch, no glass. You hear the wind passing by, the chickens in the yard, the cat climbing up on the roof. Those are the sounds you silence cannot be bought or replaced. The floor is earth, hardened earth. Under your feet are layers upon layers of footsteps from yourself, from your loved ones, from the old goat, from the toddler. In the rainy season, the earth is wet, sticky to the feet. In the winter, it cracks. You spread straw, then sweep it, then spread it again. It is never completely clean, but you don't need it to be clean, just not cold enough to shiver when you get out of bed. In the house, the center is the kitchen, a pile of stacked stones, gray ash, broken wood, and a pot always placed on it. The kitchen is where the whole family gathers, not to talk, but to near something warm. The smell of smoke is always there, always lingers. In your hair, in your blankets, in your skin. Strangers frown, but you don't notice. That smell, like the heartbeat of the house, not loud, not noisy, but always present. You have a table, a short, sturdy table with uneven legs. You have a chair, or rather, a log planed flat on one side. You have a shelf and old box nailed to the wall. On it, a few onions, some salt. Sometimes a jar of lard that you hide so carefully you forget about it. The sleeping area is where everyone is huddled together. A pile of blankets, a wooden frame, a layer of straw underneath. You don't have your own bed. You share. Not because you want to, but because there is only one place close enough to the fire. You sleep to the sound of other people breathing, coughing, daydreaming. Sometimes you wake up because someone is snoring. Sometimes you wake up because it's too cold. But you always sleep because you're used to the feeling of living with other people like that. You have a chest. Inside is everything you have kept over the years: an old shirt of your mother's, a dull knife of your father's, a piece of colored cloth that no one can remember why it was there. That is things that don't help you live, but help you be you. The house is not straight, not beautiful, not stable, but it is proof that you tried. Used hands, feet, back, and hoped to fight against wind, cold, rain, and collapse. Every time you patch a hole, you don't just fix the wall. You tell life that you haven't given up yet. And though no one outside this village knew it existed, that house still here, still holds you every night, still holds you as if it remembers every person who lived in it, every laugh, every cough, every long winter night that perhaps no one thought would pass. Tonight, you quietly touch the wall, cold, rough, slightly damp, but real. You know, tomorrow the roof might need patching. Maybe the mice will gnaw another corner. Maybe the floor will be wet from the rain overnight. But tonight it's still standing. You're still in. The stove is still burning. And so, enough. You smile slightly. And as you turn away, you suddenly think of what lies in the corner of the kitchen. The pottage has been boiling for days. Maybe it's time to tell about it. That pot is always boiling. Not boiling hard, not bubbling or making any special noise. It's just bubbling quietly, as if it knew better than to draw attention to itself. A black iron pot. The handle dented, the bottom scratched. It hung over the stove or sat askew on a large stone where the fire was warmest but not too fierce. Every home has a pot like this, but your pot is part of the house. No one knows when it was last empty. Maybe it was the year of the famine. Maybe it was the day Grandma died. Maybe it was a day that never happened. Inside, not food, not soup, not porridge, just multi-layered fluid, added daily, tasted with a wooden spoon, stirred, and hoped that it is not broken. The villagers call it pottage, a word that carries no expectations. You add whatever you have: an onion, a few cabbage leaves, a couple of dried beans, a little leftover porridge. If you're lucky, a little garlic or pork skin. If you're not so lucky, just old cabbage broth and a few clean straws. No one asked what to eat today, because the answer is always the same. You stir the pottage with a large spoon long-handled, concave, once scorched. You stir clockwise. For no reason at all. Just because your grandmother told you to. She doesn't know why. The smell of the pot is the smell of the years, not fragrant, but not foul either. It's like a treasure trove of flavors that have been diluted over generations. You can't really tell what the smell is. All you know is that if you don't smell it, you'll know something's missing in the kitchen. What does pottage taste like? It has no taste, at least not in the way rich people describe it. It's warm, full, and non-emetic. That's the standard. And when it meets those standards, you consider it a success. You never get full. But feeling of eating it was a good enough meal. A chipped bowl, 2 pieces of bread, and a long sigh after swallowing. It was what you looked forward to after a day of working in the fields. Bread well. You have it. Thick, heavy, coarse, made from barley, oats, anything that can be ground. When it's fresh, it's tough and hard to tear. When it's left overnight, it's hard as a rock. You usually use it for pottage. Dip lightly. Wait a few seconds. Then put it in your mouth, biting it like biting an old memory. When there is leftover old bread, you put it on the stove to heat, not to bake, but to warm memories. Because when the cake is too crispy, you are afraid of breaking your teeth. Teeth you don't have much to lose. Sometimes, when things aren't so bad, you have an egg. One. Maybe you found one. Maybe the chicken was too bored to hide it. You don't boil it. You crack it into the pot gently. It breaks. The yolk swirls around the cooked vegetables, melts into the mixture, and turning that food into an almost luxury. You don't know about salt and pepper. There's only salt, and salt isn't always available. When it is, you use it as a courtesy, sprinkle it as a thank you. One day, you see a man from a distant village bringing back a bag of something with a strong smell. They call it pepper. You don't believe it. There is no such thing as just for the smell. You don't understand that concept. For you, smell is a consequence, not a goal. The food here has no formula. Nothing is exactly the same, but nothing is too different either. Every meal is a variation of a single formula remnant. Plus fire, plus time, plus hope. You've heard of meat, not the thin, hanging meat, real, red, thick, sliced meat. You've heard of it, but never tasted. In your imagination, meat is something that can be chewed 5 times in a row without disappearing. You're not sure you have enough teeth for that. What about fish? Yes, but the river is far away. Fish do not come by themselves. And when caught, they must be shared. Fish are an offering, not food. You once ate dried fish. It was so salty that you had to drink water all night. But you remember it forever. Because that was the only time you must use 2 hands to hold a piece of food without dropping or breaking. In winter, food changes, it becomes thicker, less colorful, colder. You eat near the stove, not to keep warm, but the heat helps the food evaporate, pretending that it is alive. Children don't usually ask, "What's for dinner today?" They just look at the pot. If the lid is on, there might be something new. If the lid is off, it means it's yesterday. Any child who is given the first piece of pork skin will eat it as if it were keeping a secret. You've tried pretending to taste something different. You've said, "I think there's purple cabbage today." People look at you and laugh, not because they believe you, but because they want to believe you. Meals are when the whole family sits close together. No talking. No need to talk. Each person holds a bowl, uses their hands, uses bread to scoop. No one leaves any leftovers. No one eats more than their portion. If they do, they share their portion with the weaker, the sick, or the person who has just lost someone. You don't remember ever having a real party, but you remember very clearly the meals that have a new ingredient, for example. Potatoes. Potatoes are the occasion, not the dish. Food doesn't bring joy. It brings possibility of continuing tomorrow. And when you get up after the meal, wash the bowl in a basin of cold water, wipe it with the hem of your shirt, hang it on a broken bamboo hanger. You do not feel satisfied, but you are not hungry either. And here, it is the luckiest thing that could happen. You lightly touch the lid of the pot. Don't lift it. Don't look. You know it's still there. You know it will boil again tomorrow. Continue to live with you. That night, you sit by the stove. The wind whistles through the thatched roof. Ashes drift up, and someone coughs inside the room. You pay no attention. Your eyes are fixed on the dying embers. And then, you think about it. A slight sour taste in the air. Not from the food, but from the smell of early rain. Rain is coming. You'll have to check the roof. And you know it's time to talk about things you can't keep forever, like your home, and like what you own. You have never seen your Lord's face. They say he lived on the western hills, with high stone walls, red-tiled roofs, and a hunting dog that always walked 3 steps ahead of him. But that may have been an embellishment. In fact, you no matter what he looks like, because he is not present in your life as a person. But as a principle, like winter, like taxes, you know his name. You were taught to say it in your prayers, after God's and before your parents' names. Not because he was somehow indebted to you, but because it was something order existed before you were born. You live on his land, the fields you plow, the wells you dig, even the house you build with your own hands. All of it, on paper, does not belong to you, and you have never seen any papers. The one who reminds you of that island manager, commonly known as steward, he did not live in the village but appeared regularly, with leather notebook, black ink, and eyes that don't need to look at people to feel uncomfortable. Every time he comes, you have to stop everything, wipe your hands, stand up straight, not out of respect but because you know what happens when you show a lack of obedience. He asks, "How much have you planted this season? Are your hens laying? Do you have pigs? How much bread do you bake each week?" And you answer, "Not enough detail to arouse suspicion. Not enough vagueness to be recorded." You have learned how to present the truth in a non-threatening way. In this system, you are Avalon. Not bad guys like in fairy tales, but a term farmers attach to the land. No freedom, no trade, no going anywhere without permission. You are not a slave, but you are not free either. You are not chained, but the bonds are invisible and still tight when you step out of bounds. You owe not money, but labor. Every week, there are a few days when you don't work your own fields, but plow the Lord's land. No pay, no thanks. If you don't come, the land is still there, but your portion is subtracted from the invisible debt pile. People call it chore compulsory labor. The word sounds nice, but as heavy as the hoe you hold. In addition, you also owe tax. Not just one type. You have a chicken, an egg, you have a pig, a piece of bacon, you have honey, a jar, you make cider. Give a jar, use the mill pay, use the oven pay, even if it's the only oven in the village, and the fire's kept by your cousin. You can think about it and grind, bake separately, but that is illegal. Not hanged, but could be fined double next year's rice production. So you don't do it. Or do it at night when no one is looking. Or do it and pretend not to know it's wrong. Then came personal fees. You want to get married? Pay the fee. Not for a dowry, but to get permission to use the land for a new family. Your father dies. You want to keep the land, pay the fee? Even if you lived there all your life, want to move to the next village, pay a fee, and probably not allowed, even childbirth. Sometimes also noted on the tax rolls, because a child is a future worker, and someone has to count. Have you ever heard someone say escape? Not far. Just to the village across the river, where the management is more lax. They live under fake names, change their voices, change the way they hold their spoons. But you don't think much about it. Because to run away, you must first have something to carry, and you have only chickens, straw, and a few untold stories. Once that you asked your father, "Why do I have to do so much for them?" But it's never enough. He didn't look at you. He just said, "Because at least I'm alive." Then he turned away and continued stirring the pot. You don't hate the Lord. Don't love him. Don't feel anything. He is world software like March rain, like January cold. There, present, no need to be accepted. One year, he gave a reward a big cake to the village on Christmas Day. Everyone ate it. Everyone thanked him. Then he worked 2 more days in the fields. You don't blame it. Because you're used to it, grace always comes with hard work, and trust is always mixed with control. This system is unfair, but it works because everyone knows their part. You know who you are, where you stand, and what to do to stay unnoticed. Stability does not come from love, but from lack of choice. You learn to live within that order, bend to it, slip beneath it, quietly mend the tears it made, not rebelling, but not submitting completely either. Friend, live and survive is enough for you. It is a kind of victory. Tonight, as you gather the wood by the stove, you hear the wind sweeping through the mud walls. Thinner than yesterday. You know the seasons are changing, not because of the calendar, but because how that invisible order began to demand more. And you wonder if everything disappeared today, lords. Administrators, taxes, then what do you have left? Probably just a thatched roof, a pot of stew, and what you really believe? Burdens do not always have a shape. There are things you carry around every day, not strapped to your back, not on your shoulder, not slung across your hip, but they still slow you down, strain your back, and make you sit still longer after each small meal. No one tells you what you're carrying, but you know exactly what other people think is normal. The first burden is uncertainty. You don't know when winter will come early. You don't know if the fields will be flooded this year. You don't know if the rice will be infested with worms, or if the chickens will stop eating, or if there will be a new manager with a new tax code that no one understands. You learn to live with it. Don't know. It's like it's part of the food, it's always there, whether you taste it or not. Every morning, you hear the wind through the roof, see the dew on the grass, hear the strange cat walking across the yard, and you wonder, will anything change today? You hope not, because here, change is not usually good news. The second burden is worry about others. You are not alone. You have a mother who has been coughing since last winter. You have a little brother who has grown up but is still skinny. You have a small child who keeps having fevers for no apparent reason. You have an only hen that has not laid a hen for 10 days. You have a cat that has lost an ear after an unequal fight with a dog from the neighboring village. Every person, every animal, every object is a piece of your life. And every time that piece seems about to fall off, your heart tightens. No one knows, you don't say it, because everyone has their own burden. But you know if one person falls, the whole house leaned. The third burden is things you must not forget. Remember today is Egg Day? Next week the Lord sends his men to collect cider. Ashes must be sprinkled in the mustard bed. A piece of cake must be left for the old lady next door who can no longer walk. No one to remind you. No calendar, no alarm, no sticky notes. Only your memory, messy, worn in places, but still kept intact. You forgot once, just once. Didn't deliver the onions you promised for the Mass. The manager took note. Next month you were punished with 2 plowing sessions. You learned that lesson by standing in the middle of the field, looking at the sky and saying nothing. The next burden is pretend to be strong. Every morning you go to the field as if you are healthy. Every evening you come home as if you are not tired. You laugh when your wife jokes. Nod when your mother tells old stories. You eat less to give more to your children. But say you ate in the field. You don't pretend because you're proud, but because you know if you fall, no one will be free enough to carry you up. The remaining burden is trust must be kept. Whether we like it or not, you believe in God, or used to. Now you do. Believe in the necessity of believing, because if there is nothing left to hold on to, you will slip. Slip away from this life, from this house, from everything you have held on to for so long. You pray, not loudly, not long. Just a phrase you repeat every time you stir a pot, light a stove, or pass the little graveyard behind the church. May tomorrow be like today, or a little better. And then there's another burden, hard to name, hard to describe. It's a feeling, seen but not seen. You know yourself as a number in a book, a line on a tax return, a nod from the manager, an anonymous prayer from the priest. You are present, clearly, but no one calls your name except those who live under the same roof. You don't ask for glory, but sometimes, looking up at the hill where the red brick building is in the distance, you wonder, does anyone know you are here? The burden is not in your hands. It lies in the silence you must keep every day. Silence when you are treated like you are invisible. Silence when there is a shortage of food. Silence when your child coughs all night. You don't want to complain. You just want to be able to breathe without feeling something pressing on the chest. Tonight, as you pull straw to cover the drafty part of the roof, you sit down on the doorstep for a while. Not because you're tired, but because you just want to. Sit and do nothing. You don't cry, you don't sigh, you just keep quiet. And listen. Listen. The house breathes with you, wind blowing through the roof, mice gnawing somewhere, the stove crackling, the cat's footsteps, mother's cough. All is songs so familiar you know them by heart, even though no one ever taught you. You know that tomorrow those burdens will still be there. Not gone, not lighter, maybe even heavier. But tonight you can still sit here, eat a bowl of thin soup, cover the leak, warm your hands on the hot stove stone. And so, you have successfully endured another day. But there are other burdens, not from the outside, but from above, from the church, from the priest, from the rules that were there before you were born and may still be there after you are gone. And you know it's time to talk about faith, about the church's pervasion like air and how it teaches you endure without questioning. You don't remember when you were taught the faith. Maybe it was the first time your father bowed before a cross as he passed a church. Maybe it was your mother lighting a candle in a hollowed-out turnip on a long winter night and calling it a light of hope. Maybe it was the first time you saw a dead person and heard the adults whisper, "God has called you home." You don't understand much, but you repeat these things like one learns a lullaby, not for the meaning, but for the familiar melody. Religion does not come from books. You are illiterate. The priest is the only person in the village who can read. He reads from a thick book, in small print, written in Latin. You do not understand a word, but you believe that you don't need to understand. Just listen. You go to church every week, not because you expect anything, but because if you don't go, someone will notice. You stand in the wind, in the rain, in the cold. Sometimes your whole family comes. Sometimes you are alone. You look up at the moldy wooden statue, listening to the sermon floating in the air, like incense smoke. You don't try to grasp it. You just stand still. The church here is not a stone castle. It is just a rough brick house with a black tiled roof, a small bell tower and creaking wooden doors. There is no gold or silver inside, only couch, half-melted candles, and the smell of damp wood and ash. But the place has a feeling you can't name. As if walk into a room where everyone knows the world is bigger than you think, and you are smaller than you think. You don't see God, but you see his traces everywhere. In the church bells that strike at certain times, in the prayers before meals, in the rules about what is eaten on Friday. You see him in fear that if you disobey, bad things will happen. Religion is not just in church, it in the air. It is in the rules that you must fast for 40 days before Easter, that meat is forbidden on Fridays, that marriages must be performed by a priest to be valid, that children must be baptized early or they will be lost forever. You do not object. You obey. Not because of compulsion, but because he sees no other choice. The priest is not a friendly man, but he is not a bad man either. He is like the key holder to a door you must never touch. He knows a lot. He knows holidays, saints' names, prayers for coughs, and wishes to ward off evil winds. He reads books as if he were talking to another power. You don't understand, but you believe you don't need to understand, just don't make mistakes. Occasionally he would give you a token, a strip of cloth with a small cross on it, a piece of relic bone, a whispered blessing. You kept it. Not because it was valuable, but because it's one of the few things that makes you feel like someone cares. You've seen a man die without being baptized by a priest? Buried quickly? No bells, no prayers, no lights. Part of you goes cold. Not because of the wind, but because the feeling that death is not recognized. Religion teaches you that patience is a virtue, that the poor go to heaven, that the calluses on your hands are a sign of purity, that hunger is a trial, that suffering is the way. You don't ask why, because asking has no answer, and because the doubter is often isolated. You learn how to believe enough to continue. Sometimes you dream of heaven, a field without rocks, a kitchen that is always warm, a roof that never leaks, a day without having to wake up early. You don't know if it's true, but you dare not believe your faith is not big. But it is enduring, like the rope holding up a thatched roof, not pretty, but holds up through the windy season. You never see God, but you be reminded of him every time someone falls ill, when the harvest fails, when a child cries uncontrollably, or when a meteor streaks across the sky and someone falls to their knees. And then you kneel down too, even though you can't see anything, only the wind. There are ceremonies where you have to give the best part of your harvest to the church. No one forces you, but everyone does. You see the priest pick up the jar of honey, touch the young wheat, then look at you. Say nothing, but you feel yourself has been weighed. Have you ever heard someone whisper, "Does God really need all those eggs?" The question flies like dust. No one answers. But the next time, that person doesn't come to church, and you don't see them smile much anymore. Tonight, you light a small candle, place it on an old piece of wood near the stove. No particular reason. Just leave that light there. You look at the light trembling, like a small question written in fire. You don't need to answer. Just sit still, and let temporary belief replace explanation. You believe not because you understand, but because if you don't believe, everything else will be too heavy. You keep plowing, keep eating, keep kneeling, keep waiting for something good to come, though not knowing when. And from where? You sleep in the breath of prayers. Not loud, not bright, but still, warm as an old patchwork blanket. And in that quiet night, you suddenly think if God saw all, can you see the roof of your house starting to tilt? You don't sleep straight through the night. No one in your village does that. Not because they are busy, not because they are scared, but because sleep does not come as a solid block. It breaks into two halves with a silence suspended in between. You call it first sleep and last sleep. Between them, you are awake. Not quite awake, but no longer dreaming. Not sure if you are alive or just waiting to continue. You don't find it strange. You live with the rhythm of sleep like that, like the wind, like the moon, like the seasons. The house where you sleep has no separate rooms, no doors that close, no knocking if someone wants to enter. Everyone lies together, grandmother, parents, children, cats and dogs, sometimes even a goat when it's cold. Blankets are straw, old coats, thin animal skins, mattresses are the ground covered with crushed straw. You lie on your side, sometimes facing the wall, sometimes facing the stove, where the ashes still smolder. You sleep with the breathing of others. You sleep with the sounds of tossing and turning, coughing, grinding teeth, and the wind through the cracks in the roof. No one complained. Because absolute silence is a luxury, the first sleep comes early. As soon as the light goes out, as soon as the last warmth of dinner fades, you curl up and begin to drift away from the world. It is a light but heavy sleep. You don't dream much. You just feel your body become temporarily invisible. A few hours later, you wake up. No one calls, no sound, but your eyelids open. Your body stretches slightly. You turn, sit up, and breathe. The time between two sleeps is not long, but at not blank people call it sacred hour. You can pee, drink water, quietly add wood to the fire, or sit and watch the fire as if it were answering some unasked question. Sometimes, people in your house are awake. An old woman whispers a prayer, a child asks about the cat, an elder adjusts the lid on a pot. No one found that strange. You wake up, and then you sleep again. That time, the elders say, is when the boundaries between worlds are thinnest, where prayers can travel farther, where dreams can easily become signs, where the slightest sound is enough to let you hear the whole world. You dreamed in that hour. Once you dreamed of an endless field, with no rocks, no weeds, just soft soil under your feet, and a cool breeze on your back. You walked on, never tiring. The next morning, you don't tell anyone. But you feel like I was just reminded that there is another place that exists, if not out there, then at least in your head. The second sleep is deeper. There are fewer dreams. Your body understands that there is nothing more to do. No more cooking sounds, no more chicken sounds, just your own weight pressing down on the ground. You sleep, not to rest, but to temporarily forget that tomorrow morning have to start from scratch. The cold at night often wakes you up, but you learn to suffer. You lie close to the person next to you, legs crossed, hands tugging at your shirt, eyes closed. Not because you're tired, but because if you opened them, you'd see holes in the roof, cracks in the walls, and sleep will run away. One day, you heard a wolf howling in the distance. You weren't sure if it was real or a dream, but you hugged your little brother who was sleeping next to you. Not because you were afraid for him, but because the feeling that if you don't hold on, someone will disappear. The bed, if you could call it that, tilted to one side. There was a slat that creaked whenever someone turned over, but you knew how to lie down without making a sound. It was a skill. No one teaches. Can only learn by living with it. Morning did not come suddenly. It seeped into the house through the cracks in the roof. A faint white light. A rooster's cry. The first cough from someone near the kitchen. You don't jump up. Just open your eyes. Breathe. And ask yourself, how much more sleep do I have like this? Not because of fear of loss, but because sleep is the only thing that is not taxed. Some say that the soul wanders when you sleep. That if you sleep in the wrong position, the soul will get lost. That if you die in the second sleep, you will not wake up in the mortal world. You don't know what's true or false. But you never put your feet in the door. Never sleep too far from the stove. Never forget to cover the wind with the thickest cloth. Not because of superstition, but because all of those things have helped others survive to this day. And you don't think you're smart enough to improve anything. You believe in sleep as a form of resistance. When the world cannot be changed, you can at least withdraw from it temporarily, gently, quietly, without rebellion but without submission. You sleep, not to forget, but to rest to have enough strength to continue remembering. And so, every night you go through 2 births, 2 disappearances, 2 times watching the fire die down and then turn red again. You don't ask why people don't sleep through the night, because maybe sleep is not to leave the world, but to return to oneself. Winter does not come clearly. There is no first snow day. There is no official cold start time. It's just that every morning you realize the well water is colder than yesterday. The ground underfoot is harder, and the wind lasted another half breath. The roof sounds different. The small holes are no longer a nuisance. They become real threat. You start checking each leak, patching it up with old straw, rags, scraps of fabric, not to keep out the rain, but to keep some warmth that you know will not be enough. Cold is not just on the skin. It sneaks into every corner between your fingers, on the soles of your feet, between your vertebrae, even where you keep your memories. You walk slower, not because you're tired, but because the wind can blow through your shirt if you move too quickly. You know the coughing will start. Someone won't be able to get out of bed. The kids will cry less, not because they're being nice, but because they're too tired to make a fuss. You don't worry much, because it always happens. In winter, the only thing you really rely on is fire. Not the fire, but smoldering stove. Red coal. Enough smoke to feel, but not enough to sting the eyes. You build a fire with wood you collect yourself. Dry branches, rotten wood, sometimes use straw for flooring, or a piece of board from a broken cupboard. Nothing goes to waste. Everything can all become fire if needed. You keep the fire like you keep a living thing. Nurture, cover, turn around. When it cools, you sigh. When it burns evenly, you feel peaceful. There are nights when the wind beats against the walls as if it wants to blow the whole house away. You don't sleep. No one sleeps. You sit near the stove, not saying anything. Just look at the red reflection on the forehead of the loved one. It's not light, it's proof that you exist. Firewood is the most precious thing. Not gold, not salt, not meat, not. To be something to keep you from freezing to death in the middle of the night. In the middle of your own home. You count each dry branch like counting the days left until spring. A bundle of firewood, a warm evening. A week, a temporary peace of mind. You hide the firewood under the bed, behind the jar, in the attic. You don't show off, but you know which house still has enough to last the month. Which house will start burning straw? You teach your child how to choose firewood, how to listen to the sound of wood tap 2 branches together. If it resonates, it is dry. How to make firewood with bark. Dry corn hair or old cloth. You don't teach with words. You do. And let them see. One day, you come home with your hands purple from the cold, but only have enough firewood for one day. You don't talk. You just sit. Take off your shoes, and put his hands on the edge of the stove as if apologizing. Winter meals without heat. You know things will get cold before the last person had time to eat. You slurp quickly, not because you're hungry, but because want to retain heat in the belly as long as possible. You chew without tasting. Your tongue is numb from the wind, but warmth in your chest is a sign that you are alive. In the house, people sit close together, not because of affection, but because body heat is the last source of heat you don't have to hack out of the woods. The child sat on her lap. The parent sat on the edge of the bed. The dog lay on the floor. The cat, if it were still alive this season, was curled up in a torn coat. No one complained. No one wished for more blankets. Just pull your shirt close to your neck, bend your legs, and inhale slowly. One night, you wake up to a sound, not footsteps, but unusual silence. You look around, the stove is off. No one is moving. No breathing. You cough. Someone moves. Straw rustles. Then everything comes back. You exhale. The stove is lit, and life goes on, as if it had never stood still. Winter here has no beautiful white snow, no sparkling reflections, only mud, wind, cold, and one very simple wish: don't let anyone in your house freeze to death. You have burned even broken chairs, hoe handles, and wooden barrel lids. Not because you don't regret it, but because you would rather lose things than people. You don't think it's sacrifice? You think it's the only acceptable choice? When spring comes, you are not happy. You just exhale a little longer, walk a little faster, and do not burn the last part of the bedding. You clean the kitchen, collect firewood, mend your shirt, not to celebrate, but to get ready for next winter, which you know will come back. And remember, it's not the cold. It's quiet red light from the kitchen, shining on your mother's dark cheeks, on the eyes that were still open when your father thought he was asleep, and on your hands, the hands that held the firewood, held the house, held life for all those who could not speak. You don't love winter, but it teaches you how to be close to each other, the way of sitting without speaking, the way of looking at the red coals like looking at an old friend. And in that silence, you went through winter again. Hunger is something you get used to. You live with it like you live with the wind always present. No need to be explained. You eat just enough to keep you going. No more. Never too full, but never too low. Your mouth gets used to chewing hard bread. Your stomach gets used to waiting for lunch until afternoon. Children learn to hold water instead of asking for more. Hunger is a part of life. But then, sometimes, it becomes something else. Something with no rules. No escape. That year, spring comes late. There's a lot of rain. The seeds germinate slowly. The fields are flooded, then recede, then flood again. You sow a second time, a third time, and a final time. You still hope. Because without hope, how do you start? Summer is dry like land that has never had water. Young mustard greens are sunburned. Beans bloom and then wither. Rice plants are like people who bow their heads and no longer want to raise them. You wake up early, hoe the fields, scatter ashes, and pray. You look at the sky, but the sky look away. The granary is getting empty. Not quite, but every day is less than yesterday. You cut back on your portion. You cut the cake smaller. You sip the broth instead of eating the solids. Until the meal is just a ritual to remind you that you're not gone. Then comes the day you realize I am counting the remaining potatoes. Not to cook, but to watch. How to divide fairly. You look at your child, you look at your mother, you look at your neighbor. You don't count in calories, but you count in survival day. The first person in the village to faint from hunger was a little girl. No one cried, no one panicked. Only a deeper silence than usual. You are not used to that, but your body is no longer strong enough to be afraid. Children stop playing. No more asking what to eat today. They sat near the stove, their heads together, and learned to wait without complaining. That's when you know. The famine has begun. Now you no longer choose the dish. You choose something that can be boiled without dying. Bark, wild leaves, soft roots. You don't ask for names. You just smell, bite, chew, and wait for your stomach to react. You boil it 3 times. Soak it overnight, boil it thoroughly, but the bitter taste remains. You eat and laugh. Not because it's fun, but because your body has not rejected it. You start to notice smells from other houses. cooking pots, well-hidden meat smells, not because of jealousy, but because your nose is now more sensitive than your eyes. You don't ask to borrow food. No one asks. Because if so, you will have to say no, and that hurts more than hunger. By the third week, you skip breakfast altogether. Lunch is the main meal. Dinner is water. You sleep more, not because you're tired, but because every hour awake is another hour hungry. You dream more. In your dream, there is a dining table. There is golden cake. There is a pot of steaming meat. You take your first bite and wake up. Your mouth bites your own hand. You don't cry. Just lick lips as if dream left some aftertaste. When the first people die of hunger, you don't know. Just one morning you don't hear them at the stove. One afternoon you don't see them lining up to get firewood. That afternoon, the burial was quiet. No bells, no ceremony, only wet ground and a prayer not loud enough. You start doing things you never thought you would. Friend hide food, a radish, a piece of cake, a handful of beans. You wrap them in cloth, hide them behind the wall, under the pot. You feel ashamed. But you better to be ashamed than to starve. You also do something you never thought you would do. Eat a mouse. It's trapped. You look at it. You don't mind. You don't think. You boil water. Peel skin. Boil. You eat slowly. Not to enjoy it, but because want to remember that I once dared to do that to live. You begin to realize when hunger overcomes hunger, reason gives way to instinct. You are no longer the you once knew. You is something that is trying to exist. By all means, do not let others see you are desperate. The children don't play anymore. They sit counting falling beans. Pick it up, clean it, and eat it. You see that, and understand that if there was a God looking down, he would be ashamed. Then the rain came. Not a heavy rain, just a lingering wet spell. Soft soil. Buds sprout, leaves open. Not much, but enough for you. Smell hope. You do not cheer. You just stay quiet. Go out into the garden and put your hands on the ground like touching a new heartbeat. You give the first piece of young cabbage to your grandmother, to your child, to your mother. You just eat the roots and feel yourself. Still human. You survive. Not because you are stronger, but because you know how to sit still. Not panic, and wait for something better. You don't know how you get through it. You just know every day. You don't let yourself disappear. You don't forget. Every time you look at the bowl, you still see pictures of days with only water. Every time you chew a piece of meat, no matter how small, you still see a dream about mouse. And you understand hunger is more than just a lack of food, but is losing track of who you used to be. You never know where an epidemic will come from. No messenger. No black flag. Just a child coughing longer than usual. An old man sitting too long without waking up. A chicken dying quietly. Then a few days later, the second person, the third person. No one said translate, but everyone was silent in the same way. You've heard of mass death, but from afar. People say, in the next village, in the neighboring province, in places with big markets. But you never thought it would come to you until you see the little brother's eyes no longer sparkle. The disease has no shape, no smell, no sound. Just one. The cold air stays in one's throat, spreads down to the lungs, and then into the blood. You don't see it coming. Just see it. Yesterday's healthy man is now lying still as the ground. You don't go to the doctor. There are no doctors. The priest says prayers. The old woman boils herbal tea. You don't know what works. You just do it all, as if every action is a fragile rope pulling a loved one back from the brink. There are nights when you sit next to the sick person, changing towels, wiping their foreheads, and squeezing their hands? Don't let them get well, but so that you yourself do not feel like you are abandoning anyone in the last hour. Death comes like a guest without knocking at the door. No one invited, no one expected, but it opened the door itself, sat down on the bed, and waited. You see it in the fading breath, in eyes open but no longer seeing, in the gentle lightening of a body as if life were lifting itself out. Burying people is no longer a ritual. No bells, no ceremonies, no long prayers. Only dig. Lower yourself down, fill it up, and back up. No one cried out loud. Not because I'm not sad, but because crying won't bring the dead back. You dreamed of a deceased person sitting by the stove. They say nothing, just look at you. You wake up, your hand still near the cold ashes. You don't tell anyone about that dream, because everyone had such a dream that season. You start avoiding touching other people. No hugs, no handshakes, no sharing cups. You feel guilty, but you alive and you want to keep it that way. Every day, you check your loved ones with your eyes. Can you eat? Do you have a cough? Are you colder than yesterday? You don't ask, because asking is redundant. The sick know, the living guess. At some point, you realize no one fears death as much as death is everywhere, because when death becomes normal, people only fear it will choose the one they love before them. You have ever given water to a sick person and thought, if I drink this, I will be a little better. But that person can live an hour longer. You share not because you are holy, but because if you don't, you won't forgive yourself later. You pass by your neighbor's house. The door is ajar. No sound. You look at one person sitting motionless. One person lying down. You don't go in. You just close the door. Softly. Like closing someone's eyes. You think of the soul. Not much. Just when washing hands. When lighting candles. When passing by a church. You whisper, if you are there, let that man go gently. You don't know how long the epidemic will last because every day is the same cold, damp, tiring, and lacking. But you remember clearly, the first day, no one died. You are not happy. Just that afternoon, the fire burned more evenly, and the rooster crowed no longer bothered anyone. You don't organize anything. No one congratulated anyone. Just that day, you eat all the porridge in the bowl and find it delicious. The survivors are not the same. They are quieter, sit closer together longer, less loud laughter, but softer eyes. You too. Friend, count the remaining people not to take inventory, but to thank. You keep something that belongs to the deceased? A handkerchief? A spoon? A piece of clothing? You do not display, just leave it there. Like a part of someone still lives in this house. You don't forget. No one forgets. But you continue. Not for being strong, but because it's the only way to keep from getting swept away. You live on. And deep down, you know death will return. Not today. Maybe not tomorrow. But it will open again. And then, you just wish there is still a candle left to light. You don't have a watch. No one in your village has. Time is not measured in numbers. It felt by the light on the roof, by the sound of chickens in the morning, by the voice gradually deepening as the night falls. You wake up when the stove is cold. You eat when your hands are shaking with hunger. You sleep when your eyes are too heavy to open. You live in time like a fish swimming in water, always present, but needing no name. You don't know what day it is. It doesn't matter. You just know it's manure day, hay day, the day the cows start shedding, the day the apple trees have their first flowers. You don't count the days. You name by what to do. Sometimes you wonder if there is nothing to do tomorrow. Does it exist? The years pass without a calendar, but by season, equal the smell of smoke in the wind, the color of the earth, the sound of the wind changing direction, the way people breathe lighter or heavier. Each season has its own character. Spring is wet, summer is bright, autumn is quiet, and winter is the one who sits and watches you silently. You don't expect time to pass quickly, but you don't try to hold it back either. Friend, live with it, like living with a friend you didn't choose but can't leave. Every day is the same, but no day is exactly the same. The dining table is still the same. The fields are still the same. The paths are still the same. But the child grew a little. The tree was eaten by worms. The roof had a new leak. You are not looking for new. You count the changes by eye, by hand, by heart. One day you stop hoeing. Look at the clouds drifting by and think, how many seasons have I lived? You don't know, because life doesn't have to be about counting, just moving forward. You've heard that city people have schedules, plans, appointments, deadlines. You don't understand, because here, time doesn't chase you. It just stands there and watches. You don't know how old you are. Your mother doesn't know. She doesn't remember. Your father died early. Age here is not a number. It is the number of crops you've grown, the number of children you've held, the number of times you've had to replace your roof. Age is the number of times you hear people call you by a more respectful tone. There are longer seasons, not because of more days, but because of many losses. The seasons you don't want to remember but can't forget. Friend, miss them like missing a name no one calls anymore. You live with time, but you don't own it. Can't keep, can't give, can't take more. Only possible spend every hour, every minute in the right place and still not sure it's enough. You learn to be patient, not because you are nice, but because everything you need comes slowly. Rain, sprout, fruit, season, nothing comes your way, and you cannot scream to make the soil expand faster. You observe, not for control, but to see yourself still living in that flow. You sit by the door, watching the light change color, watching the chicken stand in the same place for hours, watching your shadow grow longer and shorter. No one calls it meditation, but you feel your heart lighten when you plant. You think about reaping. When you harvest, you think about preservation. When it comes to storage, think winter. Friend, always live in 3 times at once: past, present, and future. You don't name them, but you know each one. There are times when time slows down, like when you sit next to a sick person. Every minute is an hour. Every breath is a life. You wish time would stop, but it doesn't. It passes by, gently, and carry your loved one like the wind carries leaves. Then there are days when it runs. You just lit the stove when it was already afternoon. Just finished planting. Heard the afternoon bell echoing in the distance. You don't remember if you ate. You are not sad. Just sigh knowing that day has passed without leaving anything behind. Have you ever wondered if you disappear? Does time stop? Then you see the fire burning, the baby sleeping, the mother quietly combing her hair, and you know it will continue. Not for you, not for anyone. Just because it is the only thing no one can change. You don't need to beat time. You just need go through it without losing yourself. And so every day you go to bed, not thinking what tomorrow is, but think today. I didn't let time pass by meaninglessly. You don't keep time with a diary, but equal calluses, gray hairs, missing teeth, and a deeper look every time you look into a bowl of water. Time is a fair player. It gives you as it takes from you. You just need to know. Don't let it take everything and leave nothing behind. You live in a village where you know every rock. You know where the chickens like to roost when it rains. You know which cypress tree has a bird's nest. You know whose door creaks. You know the sound of the old dog when he growls in his dreams. Friend, belong here like my own skin. Your village has no fence, but no one goes beyond the fields. Not because of fear, but because no reason. Everything you need or think you need is here: land to plow, water to drink, people to live with, and silent to breathe. The village is somewhere at the edge of sight. On clear days, you can see small tiled roofs low at the foot of the hill. Sometimes, the bell rings later than the bell in the neighboring village, or the sound of dogs barking in the evening, not from our village. You are sure. You don't know what the people in the next village look like. You don't know what they eat. You don't know if they sing the same lullaby, but sometimes you hear their voices. Unclear. Just a distant call. A whine in the wind. A fragment of a sentence whose beginning was cut off by the wind. But enough to make you stop. Look up and listen. You asked your mother, "Are the people in the next village like us?" Mom did not answer right away. She just said, "They must have fields, children, winter." Then silence, as if said too much. When you were a child, you thought the village next door was like a legend, where the house is taller, the cake is sweeter, or worse, where there are people who do not believe in God, do not bow before the cross, do not fear the village law. Growing up, you understand they're not far away, but not as close as I thought. One day, a man from the next village passed by. He walked across the main road, carrying a basket of corn. He didn't look at anyone. He didn't speak. He didn't stop. But everyone sees you stand in the yard, watching. You don't remember his face clearly. But you remember posture as if the wind cannot blow, as if the ground under your feet is no longer important. That night, your stove burned later than usual. Everyone sat longer, but no one mentioned the guest. Only the general feeling is something has changed. Very small, but real. You start to pay more attention to the neighboring village. Not to stalk, but because want to know if something happens over there. Can I hear it one day? You hear a trumpet. It's not like the funeral trumpet in your village. Not slow, not heavy. Just a short sound. Echo, then disappear. You look up at the sky. Nothing. But you felt like someone had just walked through an invisible door. You think, if I go there, will anyone recognize me as a stranger? Then you answer yourself. No need. Just be quiet and unique. People will know. You have never been to the next village. No, because I don't want to, but because you never knew you were allowed. One afternoon, you go further than usual while gathering firewood, through the fields, through the mulberry trees, through the damp ground where mushrooms grow. You stop at the cliff. In the distance is a column of smoke, not from our village. You sit down. Don't move forward. Don't look back. Only sit there, listen to the winds from both sides blending without arguing. You think maybe they have someone like me sitting looking this way without moving. Someone said, there are thieves in the next village. Someone else said, they have different voices. You hear, but you don't remember. Because you know strangeness sometimes is not because of difference, but because of never having touched. You start dreaming about the next village. In dreams, nothing special. Just roofs, dirt roads, children's voices. But you realize the person in your dream, no one knows your name. You wake up with a strange feeling I've been somewhere, though I've never left the village. One morning, you see a fresh footprint near the well. Not anyone in the village. The footprints are long, deep, and point in the opposite direction of travel. You are not afraid. Just feel heartbeat faster. You don't tell anyone, because sometimes a little secret is something that makes you feel like you still have something to keep. You think, if one day I need to leave the village, will the neighboring village be open? Then you laugh, because here, no doors, just habits of keeping oneself in the same place. You don't hate your village, you don't love the village next door, but you know that between two places there is a path, and that path sometimes calls your name. You live your whole life in the village, but sometimes you feel like you don't belong here. Not because you were pushed out, no one chased away, no one blamed. You still eat together, work together, sleep together. But there are afternoons when you look around and see yourself as a shadow temporarily pasted on a familiar wall. You're not like them, but not different enough to be considered strange. You just halfway. You don't talk much. Not because you're shy, just words sometimes don't match what you carry in your heart. When others tell farming stories, you nod. When they talk about the harvest, about the festival, about the cow that just gave birth, you laugh, but your smile sometimes does not reach the heart. You know the way to the fields. You know the clatter of the wood stove. You know the time the rooster crows. But I felt like I was playing the role of someone living in the village rather than myself. Nobody knows that. No one noticed. And that's the part that makes you sad the most. Because maybe you've learned to hide your feelings of not belonging too well. You try to do more, get up earlier, talk more, smile when you should smile, bow when you should bow, say your prayers with enough volume. You try to be part of the picture. But there is always a brushstroke that doesn't match, even if it's just in your mind. You think, or maybe I was not born to stay in one place, but where to go? To do what? And who needs a man who has nothing to bring but questions? You have tried saying that to your loved ones. You ask your mother, do you ever feel like you're out of place? She looked at you, frowned, and shook her head. Wherever the land is, there the tree grows. I am here, so I am here. That's all. You nod and wrap the question into a deeper place. No one is wrong. No one is right. You just know. There are days when I walk through the village as if I were walking through a dream that I did not write down. There are mornings when I look in the mirror and I'm not sure who's in there. You still work. You still eat. You still light the stove. But sometimes you stop in the middle of doing something and forget why you're doing it. You remember, then continue. But that gap left a blur. You don't hate the village. Hate no one. Don't hate yourself. You just not knowing where you belong, and that question follows you like a shadow that never leaves. You have been away once, not far, just through the woods, up the hillside, where the grass was taller than a man. You sit down, look at your village from afar, and a strange feeling arises from a distance. You see it as more beautiful, but also more distant. You wonder, can you only love something when you are no longer in it? Come back. No one asked where you went. No one noticed you were gone. And that makes you light and heavy at the same time. You think, if I really leave the village, will anyone remember? Then you answer yourself, maybe. But they will stop. Because everyone still has fields, still has rice, still has meals to cook. You are not sad. You just be quiet. Like a letter unsent, a song unsung. You live on, like anyone else. But in your heart, you leave a small space where there are no names, no pictures, no other voices. There, you keep the question to yourself. Don't let anyone see it. Don't let anyone correct it. You don't give up, because you know belonging nowhere does not mean there is no way. You don't have to leave to be someone else. You just need to find a place or a time where being alone no longer makes you feel lonely. Maybe every village has someone like you. One person quietly carried the question that no one else needs to ask. One person standing outside the circle. Not because of hate, but because I haven't found a way in. You never know when or if you'll find where you truly belong. But you know, when that place comes, you will recognize it. Not with your eyes, but with the way your heart stops being confused. Your name is not in the history books. There is no stone tablet bearing your name. No bronze statue. Not a line in the records of the court, of the cathedral, or of scholars. You live. You do. You die. And even that, No one recorded it. You ever thought, after me? Will anyone remember me? Then you look around. The father who taught you how to plow has long passed away. The mother who lulled her friend to sleep now has shaking hands. The child you were holding yesterday is now tall enough to look you straight in the eye. And you understand remembering is something that happens for a while and then passes. You are not to blame. You did the same thing to your ancestors. You know they lived, but you don't remember their faces. You don't remember their names. You don't know if they like sweet or sour bean cakes. You just know, thanks to them, I am here. And maybe that is enough. You don't make the battle. You don't draw the map. You don't lead the way. But you have reaped the harvest after a drought, built the fire after a funeral, helped someone fall in silence. You don't let the world turn, but you keep it from falling down. You ever wished someone would tell your life story? But then you realize no one needs to tell about someone like themselves. Because everyone was themselves, at least once in their life. History does not record those who woke up before dawn. Do not copy the person cutting grass for the cow. Do not copy people to change food for children. But if it were not for these men who would have built what is written, you once saw a group of soldiers passing through the village. Shining sword, shining armor, flying flag. The villagers bowed their heads. You also bow, not out of respect, but because you know that sword will wear out, that flag will tear, but the rice will still grow every year. You don't need a name. You need the soil to not dry out. The water should not be cloudy. Family don't get sick. Friend need little, and live by keeping that little without losing it. You are not against history. You just quietly living on its edge, like a fence not drawn on the map, but still blocking the wind every day. Sometimes you get sick. Then you get well. Then you get sick again. No one took notes. But in your child's heart, the look in your eyes when you were sick, when you still tried to smile, is more deeply imprinted than any lesson. You leave no philosophy behind. Just leave how to hold a bowl without spilling it, how to lift a basket neatly, how to pick up fallen seeds without being reminded. When you die, there is no big bell, just a wreath of wildflowers, a light covering. A few people stood around, not many words, but everyone look a little longer, as if to hold your image for a few more seconds. You go as you live. No noise, no demands, no interrupting anyone's flow, only left the place where he had been sitting, leaving a warm trace, then disappeared into the wind. After you, someone will sit where you used to sit, use the cup you used, rebuild the bank you once built. You are not present, but you are not gone, because there is a form of existence, not by name, but by habit. A posture, a way to fold a blanket, a path through the fields without ever tripping. Friend stay, not in books, but in others. Then one day, someone will ask, why do people always do that in this village? And the answer will not have your name. But there you are, somewhere, in the invisible stream of memories. You are one of millions of people like that. The paving stones no one calls names. The grass keeps the soil from sliding. Breaths keep life going. History does not speak for you, but you have kept history intact. And perhaps, in the anonymity, you freer than anyone ever recorded. You don't need to conclude. For your life, not a story, but the basis of every story. And if anyone is listening, remembering, feeling, then you are still alive. In them. In today, and in every silence that follows. Thanks for listening. Not everyone chooses to listen to a long, quiet story with no climax or victory. But if you stay this far, you're probably like me. Find something deeper in the very small things. You don't have to do anything big to be memorable. Just live kindly. Take care of those around you, and keep your heart from becoming numb to silence. If today's story resonates with you or reminds you of someone else, please leave a comment below. I always read and silently grateful. If you want more stories like this, you can click like or share it with someone who needs a good night's sleep. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, let's press follow. For every time you need a place to breathe slowly, I'm still here with another story. Still light, still and still for you. Sleep tight and sound. See you in your dreams.